Hello, YouTube, and welcome to today's video. This is the third video of our series about Korea and Palestine. So if you haven't watched the first two, I suggest you go back and watch them. We looked at the Korean War, why it's called the Forgotten War, and we also looked at the conflict in Palestine. We have drawn so many parallels between the two conflicts, and we've been able to see many common factors. So those videos are very beneficial and very enlightening. So please go back and watch them. And today we will talk about this conflict more. We want to talk about some of the factors that are going on and what is going on right now and how it got there. Because, as we said before, these things don't happen in a vacuum. Yes, when you look at the Korean War, history will start at 1950, the summer of 1950. But many things happened before then that led to the Korean War. And also, when we look at the conflict today in Palestine and with the Z State, yes, the Z State media and the Western media forget that there's something that happened. Many things happened before October 7th. That's not the first day of world history. Many of you might be surprised to find that out, but that is the truth. So, before we get started, you know the drill. Please like the video, subscribe to our channel so you can get notifications when more interesting content comes out. Help out the algorithm, like the video, share with your friends. The algorithm's not very smart and it doesn't know how to handle our videos, so you need to help it out. Be smarter than it. So, before we get started, we're going to look at some news, just like we did in the previous one. So, we have this nice news article here. It says, prepare for war with Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. That came from the UK defense minister. Yep, he looks like he's interested in war. Most of them are. That's how they get their money, and that's the type of videos that we're trying to make. So, yeah, it says Grant Shapps. He is the defense minister of the United Kingdom. He wants Western nations to increase their military spending ahead of a possible conflict. So, yeah, there's been many possible conflicts, and there were many conflicts, and it looks like they're looking for more. So, yeah, they got to get their money over to their friends in the Defense Department, so, and in the defense companies. So, that's what they're talking about. So, it says he has predicted a global conflict between the West, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea within 5 years. That sounds very grim. So we have to make these kind of videos so people are informed. So hopefully we can avoid these things because, well, that would be very terrible. And we're hoping for peace, not for these type of conflicts. So Shapps has called on Britain's allies to increase their military spending in response to the so-called existential threat. So, yeah, who made this existential threat? Well, that's what we've been talking about. So, like I said, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, help out the algorithm so more people can hear the word and find out what's really going on. So, yeah, he says that Shapps vowed he would further increase Britain's military spending and that he would use our influence to ensure other allies and friends match our commitment. So, yeah, as we saw in our last video, they're really kind of worried about something that North Korea was doing. They tested a few missiles, and they made it sound like that was happening in a vacuum. But here we're hearing it from the defense minister of the UK himself, what they're actually doing. Yeah, he's let the cat out of the bag. He's letting us know exactly what's going on. So, it says in 5 years' time, we could be looking at multiple threats of conflict, including Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Sounds like their favorite boogeyman. He said, ask yourself, looking at today's conflicts across the world, is it more likely that the number grows or reduces? So, recently, we had a vote in the United Nations, first in the Security Council, about a ceasefire for one of these conflicts, and the United Kingdom, along with the United States, they voted no. So they didn't vote for a ceasefire. And now they're saying there's going to be more conflicts. So, yeah, it looks like they're kind of helping it out. So, That's kind of what we're pointing out here. But we want to know, how did it get there? So we talked about the Korean War, and the Korean War happened in the 1950s, the early 1950s, from 1950 to 1953. And we saw a lot of problems that happened on the Korean peninsula. Yeah, most of it got destroyed. And the cities further north, they got even more bombed. And yeah, they lost all their infrastructure, their hospitals, homes, their markets, their roads. All these things were bombed. You could take a picture of Pyongyang in 1951, and you can take a picture of Gaza today, and they look about the same. Maybe the ones of Pyongyang are in black and white, but if you could put some color on it, then they would look basically the same. You wouldn't be able to tell a difference. So yeah, that's what we've been talking about. So then we talked about how Korea has been able to recover, and we want to see some interesting things that have happened on the Korean Peninsula, and then we want to look at some things that are happening over in the Holy Land. So one thing that happened, the United Nations, they partitioned the Holy Land between Israel and Palestine. So, and then we saw a map. We have a map of how Palestine has been disappearing. And we also saw in the 1940s, around the same time, that Korea was divided, and the United Nations, they got involved in the war. So many Western countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, they were involved in this war. And also Turkey, they also got involved in this war. So one thing that is very interesting from Turkey, when they got involved in the war, some of their soldiers, they were able to convert a few people to Islam. Yes, they talked to some Korean people, and a few of them accepted Islam. And Korea, they've had in their past little exposure to Islam, not a whole lot, because as we've said before, they were kind of a hermit kingdom. They kept to themselves, but they did do some trade. They've had traders from Arabia and from Persia, Iran, and also Mongolia. So, and they do have similar blood as the Turkic people, similar ancestry. So, you have some of the Korean people, they did accept Islam. They say today in South Korea, there's about 40,000 Muslims, and that's Korean Muslims. Many of them are reverts. Some of them are not. Maybe they accepted Islam before from the Turkish, or maybe even further back. So some of them also came in contact with Chinese Muslims, because some of them escaped to China when the Japanese, they came to colonize Korea. And many people, especially from the northern part, they went to China to escape the Japanese. Some of them were able to resist and able to form an army to fight back against the Japanese. And they were able to join up with the Chinese army during World War II, and some of them with the Soviet army. So, but there were always some people who came in contact with Chinese Muslims. So there has been some Islam that has come to Korea. And yes, it's a small minority. But when we look at South Korea, so many of you who probably know, there is a famous YouTuber from South Korea. He reverted to Islam, Dawood Kim, and he's made a lot of videos trying to teach people about Islam. So he also shows some places in Korea, in South Korea, like in Seoul, where you can find halal food. You can even find Turkish food, and you can find halal Korean food, halal Chinese food. So there are some halal restaurants, and he also shows some places where you can pray. So we'll show you a little clip, and then we will continue on.
Assalamualaikum. 안녕하세요. 다우드킴입니다. I came here Myeongdong Street today, and I heard there is Halal Street. There is a Halal Mart and Halal Cafe and Halal Restaurant. So there are every stuff for Muslim people, and even there is a prayer room. It's really good for me because I have to go prayer too. So let's go. Follow me. Follow. Halal Mart. That's Halal Mart. Wow. And oh, this is Halal Cafe, and this is the place we will go, named Chicken Cheese Pizza Kampunku. Kampunku. Yeah, Kampunku. So let's go. Oh, there is a prayer room in restaurant. It's so interesting. Oh, okay. So there's a restroom, so you can take wudu in there. Okay, let's go inside. It's very clean. I really didn't expect that there's prayer room in restaurant. Wow.
So yeah, we heard from Daoud Kim. He's shown that there are some prayer rooms in South Korea and Seoul. So for Muslim travelers, it's very good. You can find a place to pray. So you can find halal food. But when we actually look at religion in Korea, in South Korea, it's kind of interesting. So we pulled up our friend Wikipedia. Wikipedia, it's very pro-West, but it also gives us some very interesting statistics to take a look at. So we look here. It says religion in South Korea is very diverse. Most South Koreans have no religion. Christianity, Protestantism, and Catholicism and Buddhism are the dominant confessions among those who affiliate with a formal religion. However, Buddhism, it's the traditional religion in Korea. It arrived in 372 of the Common Era. That's a very long time ago. And there are many Buddhist temples in South Korea. Many of them got destroyed in the war, but there are still many. And when we look here, we see that Christianity, it's almost a quarter of the population. And you have to wonder, how did it get to be a quarter of the population? And there were kind of two waves. So, yeah, right before the Japanese came, yeah, the Western countries, they sent their missionaries over to Korea and they converted some people. And then again, after the Korean War, South Korea, very aligned with the West, they welcomed in Western missionaries. The United States, there are many evangelical Christians and other groups like Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons who send their missionaries across the world. We've made a video about the Mormons. You see them on their bicycles wearing white shirts, nice suits, and ties. And yeah, they definitely show up in South Korea. When you go to South Korea, you'll see some Mormon missionaries and you'll see lots of churches. And many of them, they are more of these modern type churches. And they kind of have these Z group influence. Yeah, they have influence from the Z's. So, like in the United States, a lot of the churches have been influenced by John Darby and some of these other dispensationalist Christians. However, we're not going to go into that in this video. But if you like the video and you subscribe to the channel, you know the drill about the algorithm. Yeah, share the video, write some comments, and when we make a video more about that, you'll get a notification and you'll be able to see it. So, yeah, please help me out so I can make some more videos. So, that's kind of what's happened in South Korea. So, the missionaries, a lot of them came from the United States and from the West, and they have spread Christianity, and it's got about a quarter of the population, which is more than the Buddhists. So, yeah, it's not like the Philippines where most people are Christian, but they're still a huge Christian minority, and they have a very strong influence, especially in the government. Yes, the president of South Korea is Yoon Suk Yeol, and he has been president for about a year and a half. And if you come down here in Wikipedia, you'll see that he's a Roman Catholic. So he's actually the fourth Catholic president of South Korea. The United States has had, just like the Catholic, so-called the Catholic president of the United States. This one, Mr. Yoon, he also is kind of friends with the Z group, with the Z's. So, yeah, you don't see that in most Catholic countries, but we see that among these so-called Western countries. So, he is the fourth one. Some of the other presidents have been Protestants. So, yeah, that is religion in South Korea. Now, if we go over to North Korea, we talked about before the Juche. Juche is their state philosophy. And Juche, well, it's basically self reliance. It has a lot of traditional Confucianism with a very strong leader. And when you see news or blogs about North Korea, you'll see a lot of monuments. Yeah, they like to build their monuments to their country, to their leaders, to their history. And we talked about something called Cholima, which is very important in North Korea. And that's how they really rebuilt their country after the war. So you will see some monuments to Cholima. And they also have the Juche Tower, and that is the celebration of their state philosophy. So Juche is kind of a Marxist. It's considered Marxism, but even some of the former communist countries like East Germany, Yugoslavia, Soviet Union, they no longer exist. But they even said that it wasn't pure communism, and they had a lot of differences. So some of them said Juche is more of a quasi religion because it elevates the status of the leader. Well, that seems to be true. However, we see that in a lot of countries, and we see that throughout history, even in Europe, where the kings they were somewhat divine, and we also saw that in China, where the mandate of heaven, or the emperor of China, he had this mandate. He was like a representation of God. So yeah, we can see that in North Korea still, and it seems like North Korea, they are more traditional, and they're also very worried about their sovereignty, and that's why we just took a look at the news, and we've seen some of their reaction to some of these Western countries putting pressure on them, and that's why there's been this tit for tat, back and forth, military drills, weapons testing. It seems like it's a never ending cycle. And yeah, there have been some leaders in South Korea in the past, and also in America, like Donald Trump, when he went to North Korea and talked with Kim Jong un. And they have always tried to work for unification. However, now they seem to be going in opposite directions. So that's kind of where we're at now in Korea. So when we look over in the Middle East, in Palestine, we also see that it has erupted into a violent conflict. Yep, the Aziz, they have put Gaza under siege, and we see that the Z's, we call them the Z's here on YouTube, their philosophy is Zionism, and that was started by someone we talked about before, Theodor Herzl, and he was a secular, a non-religious person. He happened to be Jewish, but even many Jewish people today, especially more Orthodox ones, they don't agree with the Z's, so we can see some disputes there as well. So yeah, there's some very interesting correlations, and we can also look at the relations between the Z state and South Korea. So we come back to Wikipedia, and we can find something very interesting. They have a nice picture here of the embassy in Tel Aviv. It looks very big, so it's still in Tel Aviv apparently. Some countries have moved it to Jerusalem, but yeah, we have Israel-South Korea relations. It refers to the diplomatic, commercial, and cultural ties between Israel and South Korea. They've had relations between each other since 1948. That's when they were both established. So they have a very long history of having diplomatic relations. It says in 1962, both states initiated official diplomatic relations. So that's kind of interesting. In 2021, Israel and South Korea signed a free trade agreement. And yeah, South Korea, they have some deals with Israel for defense and technology. So we can see in the early history, says Korea and Israel, they established their official relations on April 10th of 1962, but they had relations before. And it says that Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, he had considered sending troops to help out South Korea during the time of the Korean War and helping out the United Nations. However, Israel, many of their people, they had come from the Soviet Union. They were the Ashkenazis who came from the Soviets, and many of them were still communists. And they also had set up many kibbutz, which also is kind of a communist thing. So they had influence from the Soviet Union as well. And some of them had suggested making relations with North Korea because they were also communist. So, and they had relations with the Soviet Union. So Israel, the Z state, they have tried to play both sides very early on. However, it seemed like North Korea, they were never interested. So they didn't want to have any relations with the Z state. They didn't have any plans to make relations with the Z state. So the Z state, they shifted over to South Korea. So, and if you go on to Wikipedia, there's a very long article here about some of the economic relations. So you can take a look at that and can see some interesting things. So when we switch over to Israel and North Korea, so it says here in Wikipedia, they do not have any official diplomatic relations, and communication between the two countries are hostile. So that's probably one reason why the UK has continued and the US has continued to put North Korea on their naughty list, and why they are saying that there will be a conflict because, well, there's already a conflict, and then they try to spread it. So it says Israel does not recognize North Korea and regards South Korea as the sole legitimate government of the Korean Peninsula. So, and it says since 1988, North Korea has recognized the sovereignty of the state of Palestine over all of Israel. So yeah, North Korea, they also have a one-state solution, but it's quite different from South Korea's version of the one-state solution. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. So they don't recognize Golan Heights as part of Israel, but rather they recognize it as part of Syria. So, yep, in 1967, the Z state, they captured the Golan Heights from Syria, and they have been occupying it. So that is another area of conflict. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see that these two countries, North and South Korea, they have very opposite ideas on what's happening over in Palestine and in the Holy Land. So it does say, if you go further down, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Israel sent a diplomatic delegation to North Korea, but it says efforts were stopped by then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, possibly due to United States and Mossad pressure. So, yeah, we can even see that here on Wikipedia. Yeah, we know what's going on, even when we read their notes. So, and it says in 2010, the Israeli foreign minister labeled North Korea as part of the axis of evil. So, when we go back to what the defense minister of the UK is saying, we can very clearly hear, we can see the parallels. So, yeah, these are some very interesting things that are going on in the world. So, please like our video. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel. You know the drill. Help out the algorithm. Share and like. And yeah, let's bump it up in the algorithm because the algorithm won't do it by itself. So today we have looked at some very interesting things. We have seen the religion in South Korea, how it's been influenced from overseas, and especially the Christians and the more modern Christian Z types. They have sent their missionaries over to South Korea and have converted about a quarter of the population. And there are probably even more people who have come in contact with Christianity. Yeah, the Christian missionaries, they do things like set up free English classes. And South Korea today, it's a very competitive society. So if you go back to Dawood Kim, we looked at a clip of one of his videos. He has another video on YouTube, and he talks about how it's very difficult for Islam in South Korea. And that is because he says it's very competitive society. People, they don't want to take time to pray. You know, Muslims, they pray 5 times a day. We try to thank Allah for what he has given us, and we want to remember him. So we should pray 5 times a day. However, in South Korea, everything is go, go, busy, busy. So they don't want to take the time to pray. So when they hear they have to pray 5 times a day, they're like, these Christian missionaries, they just tell us I have to go to church once a week. So that's it. So it's a little bit of a challenge for them. He also talks about the media, and we've seen how the media is influenced by the West and by the Z's. So, yeah, that is another thing that makes it very difficult. However, I've been in South Korea, and I feel like, at least as a tourist, as a traveler, South Korean people, they're very respectful. And when I tell them I'm Muslim or I want to pray, they always try to help. Here's a place to pray. Here's something without pork, something like that. So the people, they're very kind. But as we see, the government of South Korea, they're also very smart. And they like to have tourism, and they like to have people from other countries come for study or for work. So they also have made it very easy for people to find a place to pray. So that's very good. And yeah, we have to respect them for that. North Korea, it's a bit of a mystery, but we do know that there is a mosque in Pyongyang. It was built by Iran, but it seems like it is a mosque mostly for diplomats. So, but there may also be some Korean Muslims there too. But since North Korea, they're kind of nervous and kind of quiet. We don't really know what's going on there. But we talked about their state philosophy and how they are worried about their sovereignty and about protecting their land. So that is something very similar to what's going on in Gaza and Palestine. And that's why it seems like they're very sympathetic to the Palestinians, as you can see from many of their foreign policy statements, and the fact that they don't recognize the Z state, and they call it an axis satellite of the West, so to say. So, yeah, it's very interesting that we can see these parallels. So, yeah, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, help out our algorithm. So, write some comments. So, hopefully this video, it has been very enlightening, and it has been a very interesting series. So we started with the war in Korea and the division of Palestine and Israel. And we've seen the effects of the conflict, how the people have recovered. And we hope that God, Allah, He will bring peace into the Middle East. And we also hope that He will guide the Korean people, help them to find a way to unify their country and to be a strong country. And we hope for peace around the world. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.